Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on antisocial behaviour, which is a second topic-based online event as part of the fantastic 4 Million Homes programme. The 4 Million Homes programme is funded by the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities and is being delivered by the Confederation of Cooperative Housing and PPCR. My name's Paul Kelly. I'm an associate of the Confederation of Cooperative Housing, and I'm based up here in Liverpool and delivering some of the training through the 4 Million Homes programme in the Liverpool for the North. And I'll be hosting this event today. We've got some great speakers lined up who I know you'll all find of interest, and I hope that will stimulate the conversation, which will be fantastic. Firstly, we're going to hear from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, from Charlotte Hillard, who's the policy advisor working on antisocial behaviour in social housing quality, and Nick Humphrey, who's a policy advisor working on the Antisocial Behaviour Task Force. We will then have some insight from Nick Reynolds, who is the chair of the National Federation of Tenant Management Organisations and a Birmingham City Council tenant. And we're going to end the session today with input from Terry Fredericks Greenslade, who is an antisocial behaviour officer from Colchester Borough Homes, and Suzanne Page from Active Essex. Today's session will explain a bit more about the different types of antisocial behaviour and what landlords should do to prevent and tackle antisocial behaviour. The session will also outline the need to report problems, how to report them, and what to do if your landlord does not deal with your report properly. And the session will also feature examples of what projects landlords have set up to prevent and tackle antisocial behaviour positively. So, without further ado, can I introduce you to Charlotte Hilliard and Nick Humphrey from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, who will be outlining the government's expectations of landlords around this issue. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to give an overview of what ASB is, what can be expected of landlords as per the regulatory standards with regards to managing ASB, the guidance available to help residents with reporting ASB, and finally, an overview of the ASB case review system. So firstly, in terms of what ASB is, antisocial behaviour includes a range of nuisances and criminal behaviours which are causing distress to others. So some of the key examples of ASB could be noisy or abusive behaviour, could be vandalism, intimidation, excessive and persistent noise, public drunkenness, littering and illegal drug use. Whether someone's actions can be classed as antisocial behaviour actually relies heavily on the impact that it has on other people. So behaviour that is frequent or persistent is more likely to be considered as ASB, as the type and intensity of behaviour is also important to consider. So some things, for example, that might be classed as a nuisance, but are not always always classed as ASB, are potentially, one-off parties, infrequent and occasional noise or disturbances or disputes with neighbours. The Neighbourhood and Community Standard, which is part of the wider kind of regulatory standards set by the Regulator of Social Housing, this sets expectations for registered providers of social housing to cooperate with relevant partners to promote the well-being of the local area and prevent and tackle ASB. So registered providers should make sure tenants are made aware of their responsibilities and rights in relation to ASB. They must provide strong leadership, commitment and accountability on preventing and tackling ASB. And there also has to be a shared understanding of what their responsibilities with other local agencies are. There should be a focus on preventative measures tailored to tenants' needs. Landlords should take prompt, appropriate and decisive action to deal with ASB and to resolve the problem before it escalates. All tenants should be able to easily report ASB to their landlords, and they should also be kept informed about the status of their case as it progresses. And then finally, landlords must provide support to victims and witnesses when they are experiencing ASB. So in July 2021, DLUC published guidance on help with ASB for social housing tenants specifically. So this guidance is designed to make it easier for tenants to know how to report ASB. And it also sets out the powers, roles and responsibilities of local organisations so that tenants know where to go to get help. The guidance sets out that if tenants are made to feel uncomfortable or inconvenienced by other people's behaviour in their communities, where it is safe to do so, they should firstly try to approach the other party involved to explain to them how their actions are affecting them and to ask them to change their behaviour. However, the guidance also makes it clear that when tenants feel threatened or if they believe their safety or the safety of others is being put at risk, they should firstly contact the police or call 999 in an emergency. So where residents are unable to resolve the issues themselves, social landlords, the police and local authorities all have responsibilities to support victims of antisocial behaviour. Residents should usually contact their landlord in the first instance for help, and landlords might need to engage other agencies. So for example, they might also advise residents on whether to report the incident to the local authority, for example, or to the police. We also have the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act of 2014, which recently has been updated to introduce specific measures designed to give victims and communities a say in the way that complaints of antisocial behaviour are dealt with. So for example, one thing that has been brought in is the Antisocial Behaviour Case Review, which was formerly known as the Community Trigger. And this gives victims of persistent antisocial behaviour, which has already been reported, it gives them the right to request a multi-agency case review, provided a local threshold is met. So the process allows victims of antisocial behaviour to request that their case is reviewed if they think that agencies have not taken sufficient action and not done enough to help with their case. In terms of more information on the ASB case review, so agencies have a duty to carry out a case review when someone requests one, provided their case meets a locally defined threshold. And there's more guidance on this within the guidance on the antisocial behaviour case review as per the link on the slide. If a qualifying complaint is made, a case review must be held to then determine the adequacy of the agency's responses. The case review has been designed so that agencies such as the police, local authorities and housing providers can share information about the case, review actions taken and decide what future action needs to be taken. There are also other routes for residents to complain or progress their concerns regarding ASB. So this could include seeking independent free legal advice, or it could also include contacting the housing ombudsman. Where an antisocial behaviour victim remains dissatisfied once they've been through their landlord's internal complaints procedure, they can seek redress through the Housing Ombudsman Service, and this is an independent complaints resolution service. Thank you, and I hope that was helpful in terms of setting out some of the options available to residents in terms of addressing ASB in their areas. I'm now going to pass to Nick, who I think is going to give an overview of some of the additional work that government is doing in terms of the ASB action plan.
Cool. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to speak. So as Charlotte was saying, I work in the Antisocial Behaviour Task Force, which is a new team that was set up in government to deliver the Antisocial Behaviour Action Plan, which was published just a couple months ago and was a real priority of the Prime Minister in terms of how important antisocial behaviour, tackling antisocial behaviour is, and also how it affects so many different elements and different things to think about. So that's why I won't talk through in detail all of these headline policies, but very happy to take questions on any of them. But I think the key things I kind of want to sort of stress is the recognition that to tackle ASB, to tackle antisocial behaviour takes thinking about lots of things. It's about giving police the right powers in terms of being able to do, say, hotspot responses where they're able to put police in areas where there's regularly reports of ASB to make sure that it doesn't happen. It's about giving local authorities the power to deal with fly tipping and littering and graffiti. It's about helping tenants to landlords to be able to and indeed neighbours to help where a tenant in, say, private housing is causing a lot of antisocial behaviour for residents, that they're able to take actions. But it's also about making things like green parks and high streets, making them feel, giving them the sort of regeneration in terms of the funding and the powers to sort of make them feel like places people really want to be in, and have that sense of pride in place. That's really important for this. And it's about us understanding a bit more about people's experience. And so we're going to be spending quite a lot of money understanding a bit more about how people experience antisocial behaviour in their day-to-day life, and understanding what are the key concerns. And finally, some of it, obviously is about prevention as well, in terms of targeting particularly young people who we're worried are on the sort of cusp of a crime, and antisocial behaviour is often the first step towards more criminal behaviour, and making sure that they're the youth services and sometimes the sort of family support, but making sure there are other options to help young people there. So what we're doing as a task force is we're working on some of these policies which are new, but also just bringing things together and making sure that we think about this as a whole, and make sure that all the different important people involved in this, whether that's social housing providers, whether that's local authorities and councils, whether that's the police, whether it's the courts, that everyone is working together and understanding, so that we can really start to tackle this in local locations. For I just quickly a couple things which I think might be of particular interest here. So as you're saying, I think for us, what we're really conscious of is we really need to know more about where people are suffering from antisocial behaviour, how they're feeling it, and it's something we're asking a lot of social housing providers to understand how their residents are, how many are experiencing antisocial behaviour. But it's also something where we want to get more information from the police, from local authorities, from the courts, and more generally to understand, so we have a really good picture. And as part of that, we're looking to create a sort of one-stop shop where it makes it much easier for people to report antisocial behaviour, and make sure that that information gets to the right responder, you can take action, and then that also that once you've reported it, you're able to get feedback on what happened, and understand that by reporting it, action has been taken. And I think that's a key priority for us, and why we're looking at projects like an immediate justice project, where once someone's been caught committing antisocial behaviour, say graffiti, that really quickly, maybe perhaps as quickly as 4 hours, we're getting them to clean up their mess and really make sure that the communities to sort of show that when people are causing problems to the community, that they're fixing those problems. There are also a couple of things just on the right hand side around things we're doing to try and help social landlords tackle, in terms of we want to set clear expectations about what social landlords, to remind them of the powers they already have in terms of allocation and eviction, and to make sure that it's clear that we do think that if there's evidence of someone committing antisocial behaviour, that should prioritise them in terms of allocations. And we're also looking at a sort of 3 strikes and you're out eviction expectation for all social landlords. I'll stop there because I'm conscious, most keen to help in terms of responding to questions, but I'm really interested to hear any further questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Charlotte and Nick, for your input today. Much appreciated. I'm just wondering, has anybody got any questions that they would like to ask? Any comments people want to make on that presentation? Nick Reynolds.
Yeah, hi, cheers, Paul. I'm just wondering, I'll be talking later. I just needed to come in quickly here. Obviously, we manage properties on behalf of the local authority as a tenant management organisation. And across the estate, there's 270 properties, mixed tenure. So there's private tenants of private landlords. And then the biggest problem that we're facing is in relation to tenants in homes of multiple occupation. Now, I'm not talking about social housing here, but their actions actually reflect an impact on us as a community in social housing. I just wondered if Nick or Charlotte could advise if there's any work being done in that area at all, please.
Sorry, I didn't. Did you say this is specifically in relation to social housing?
No, sorry. It's basically what's actually been looked at in relation to HMO, homes in multiple occupation, and that, because when some parts of the community try to report it, what we're facing is that people are saying, well, there's nothing that we can do about it. And it's sort of like, well, there must surely be something that can be done about it, because if regulations are there for us in social housing, does it apply to all other aspects and tenures in housing as well?
So the one thing that sort of flag is that particularly if we're kind of recognizing that we just introduced started the process of putting in a new laws in around sort of reforms for renters, and much of that is about protecting renters from landlords, but another part of that is to make it much easier for landlords to evict people who have doing antisocial behaviour. And I appreciate that's tricky in a case of multiple tenants in terms of identifying who, but we're hoping that these powers should at least give them a bit more guidance on how to work through that. But yeah, that's it.
Hey, thank you very much, Nick. Can I bring in Brian now, and then I'll bring in Alicia and Carol after. Brian Barnsley.
Good afternoon. I think in some ways that there's a dilemma with antisocial behaviour, particularly when it comes to local authority housing, because they also have an obligation in relation to homelessness. So where somebody's responsible for antisocial behaviour, for a local authority to evict them or remove them from a property, they then also have the responsibility of ensuring they do have a property. Is there any guidance as to what they can and can't do in relation to allocations on that?
So we are going to publish quite soon, possibly within the next month or so, new guidance around this to do. But you're absolutely right, Brian. It's a really tricky problem for local authorities. You're right that we need to try and help neighbours and tenants in terms of when they're suffering from someone who's causing regular ASB, but antisocial behaviour. But like at the same time, councils do have an obligation to house someone, and trying to work out the best way of meeting both those obligations is something that we'll be providing guidance on. But I don't want to pretend it's going to solve the problem, but we're certainly providing something more to help people through that in the next couple of months.
And also just to say, on our side, we're planning to, I know this also doesn't kind of completely perfectly resolve the problem, but we are also planning to issue good practice guidance, which will be in the form of case studies at some point, and that will be around the idea of kind of preventing ASB through providing some support to perpetrators of ASB who suffer from mental health problems and drug and alcohol misuse issues and things like that. So we hope that the aim of that is essentially to prevent ASB, and then we're not getting into situations where people are needing to be evicted and things like that.
Thank you very much. Can I bring in Alicia? I think you're in sunny Suffolk.
Yes, it kind of follows on a bit from what Brian was saying. I mean, for instance, the estate that I'm on, it is an estate where there are a lot of people with problems. There is a lot of alcoholism, mental health issues. One of the biggest problems is there isn't a explicit relationship between the police, within the local authorities, and within the housing associations. And I mean, I'm now on the board of my housing association representing the tenants, and also vice chair of the tenants committee. And I joined because of my own rather horrific experiences of ASB. at the hands of someone who had very severe mental issues and our problems with alcoholism. And how can we, it's I'm really struggling, whereas some of the areas that are more tangible, you can really get a hold of and start to tackle. ASB is one of these ones. For instance, I struggled for 2 years. The guy involved was actually sent to prison in the end for 9 months and was evicted. But it took me 2 years, and you're reporting to the police, you're then reporting to your housing association. You've got all these different people that you're having to report to. You're saying the same thing over and over and over. In the end, your own health, your own mental health is very much affected. And it would be much easier if we were all made, for me, even in my position, I'm talking to my housing association and trying to get to ascertain the actual relationship with the police and with the local authorities, and it's all very woolly and everyone is passing the buck. And is there any intention to actually get, well, in basic language, to knock a few heads together and get everyone talking the same language, rather than us as tenants having to go here, there and everywhere, and making our own mental health worse.
Yeah. I'm really sorry to hear that, Alicia, and I'm really sorry for everything you've gone through, but also thank you for trying to be proactive and joining tenants groups and being taking it. It's something that we really recognised in the action plan, is that there are a lot, there's the police over here, there's local authorities over here, there's housing providers here, and it is hard. There are some groups, sort of community safety groups, which bring together the different partners to do it, but it is something we're keen to do. And I think that's one of the things we really think, when I mentioned earlier about this one-stop shop, it's that by having, what we're hoping is that we can have a system where we're tracking when you make those complaints, that it's put into a full system, so we get data, everyone gets the data, and we have ways to centrally to hold people to account locally, but also more importantly, you get updates on what's going on, so that you can, and can see that kind of like, oh, this is what's happening on there, which should force, should be the process by which those heads get knocked, as it were. But no, we do recognise it, and I think there's some things we, and I think you're absolutely right to talk about, the links to mental health and to drugs, and to look at, for instance, with the immediate justice pilot we're looking at, where we're trying to quickly, where there's been a perpetrator who might do some visible reparative, like sort of fix what had been done or do some stuff locally. We're also conscious that that needs to be put hand in hand with, support if there's drug and alcohol problems, or if there's mental health problems, and that we're not going to try and just do one, certainly not without the other, but like recognise what's right for the right person. And hopefully some of these mechanisms that they get through will create the kind of systems where we recognise, okay, we're going to act quickly, but we're going to act this way and with this person, and that with another. I'm not pretending this is going to happen quickly or do it, but you're absolutely right. That is for us a lot of what the action plan is to try and get as many people to go, and that's why I have, and this is going to, as I said, this is a real priority for the Prime Minister, and we have like the Home Secretary and our Secretary for the State for a meeting sort of on a very regular basis to bring all the different people together to try and see progress on that.
And I think just to come in from kind of our side as well, in terms of the social housing side of things, I think the ASB case review as well is specifically set up where residents are having those issues in terms of they're not seeing much action, and they're reporting it to multiple different agencies, and those agencies are not talking to each other. Residents do have the opportunity to go through that ASB case review process, and that actually requires those agencies, including the police, the local authorities and the housing provider, to share information with each other about the case, review what actions have been taken collectively, and how they can coordinate better actions going forward. So I would kind of urge you to use that that power through the ASB case review. if you think effective action's not been taken so far.
Thanks very much for that. And yeah, sorry to hear your situation, Alicia, but real thanks for sharing it. And I think what's inspiring is that you've then taken that to get involved in the board and to helping to shape what comes further. And that's what we need to encourage more and more. So yeah, really inspiring to hear where you're at. Thank you for that. And can I bring in now Carol G from Fleet?
Hi, I'm in a vivid home flat, and I dread bank holidays. I've got a Vietnamese family upstairs, and this last one, for last weekend, for example, there were 18 adults and 17 children in a 2-bedroom flat the whole long weekend, making a racket, causing disturbance, took up half the car park, etc. And Vivid say that they can't do anything because they can't stop people coming to visit.
Okay.
Is that so?
Does anyone want to pick up that point?
Sorry, I don't know if I missed the last bit there. Is that so? Sorry, could you just repeat the last bit of the question?
Yeah, I've complained to Vivid on a few occasions. In fact, I've had the ASB forms to fill out with times and details, etc. This has been ongoing for about 2 years because of their long weekends and various times that they seem to have celebrations, etc. And Vivid say that they're not prepared to do anything because they cannot dictate how many people come to visit. But my concern is these 18 adults, 17 children in a 2-bedroom flat over a whole long weekend. Surely that's health and safety, fire, blah, blah, regulations being breached.
Yeah, I completely understand that. That sounds very, very difficult to deal with. I think from our perspective, as far as the guidance goes on, social housing. Sorry, did you say this was a social housing matter? Or was this? Yes. So I think and it sounds as though you have already done this, we would always advise that you speak to your landlord in the first instance.
Yeah.
But obviously, if they are not taking appropriate action, which it sounds like that's what you're experiencing. Yeah. We would advise that you, contact the landlord through their formal complaints procedure. So complain about the fact that they're not handling it as needed. And then also you can, if they're still kind of not responding and still not, taking appropriate action, you can also contact the Housing Ombudsman Service. Yeah. Which is an independent complaints body, and then they can look into how the landlord has dealt with that kind of issue. Yeah. There's also, as I previously mentioned, the ASB case review as well, which is a kind of a multi-agency approach to looking at the case, looking at how it's been dealt with, and looking at what further can be done. So there's a few different routes open to you, and I'm more than happy to provide kind of more information on that. And then if it continues, and I think you mentioned that it had been a couple of years that this has been going on, that you've had issues. Yeah. If that continues and you still don't think the landlord are taking, the action that they need to take, you can also seek legal advice as well on next steps in relation to this, and I can provide you with some kind of contact details and links to websites and things where you can seek that advice.
I think the message there, Carol, is to keep the conversation going with the housing association.
Okay.
Yeah, and progress it through their formal complaints procedure as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I bring in Sue? I think you've got your hand up as the last question on this slot.
Right, so you've mentioned about 3 strikes and you're out, but I'm a little concerned because the Housing Ombudsman has ruled on a number of cases where it has been the fault of the housing provider actually allocating a home to the wrong tenant because they had mental health issues or other problems, and that's caused problems with tenants that were already living there, and therefore they were trying to evict that tenant, but actually they were put in the wrong setting. And therefore I want to make sure that when you're looking at some of these fast track things, that you've got safeguarding in place, because it may not necessarily be a tenant that's at fault if they've actually been allocated a property that's really unsuitable for them. The other thing I'd be concerned about is that there's an awful lot of things about drugs misuse and alcohol misuse and mental health issues. I don't want a diktat that says we've got to start funding more out of the housing revenue account, because we're already struggling to actually meet some of the new sort of legislation that the government is saying. And finally, I would like to say, having been someone who's actually suffered antisocial behaviour, quite severe antisocial behaviour from a housing association tenant who's only recently been evicted, thank goodness, there should be some facility in there where you fast tracked for somebody who's vulnerable. So my husband is deaf blind, sitting in his own garden, and an 80-year-old child goes up to the bedroom to see where he's sitting and then gets the hose pipe and completely drenches him. He's got no idea that this jet of water's coming to him. And then when he gets up, he falls over because the slabs are wet, so he hurts himself. That happened over 3 years ago. My husband will still not go out in our own garden. And he knows that family's gone, but the distress that this family inflicted on us, and believe me, there were missiles coming, bricks, you name it. I almost got hit in the face with one of these bricks. So I think there should be also, where there is antisocial behaviour from a tenant, if it's involving a vulnerable tenant or person, that you have an option to fast track that. I know there's the Pilkington case where you have to have a serious case review, but that was still too slow. My husband now will not leave. I mean, he won't even go into his own garden. I mean, and that's 3 years after the first incident happened. I mean, I just want you to sort of think about all these things when you're actually formulating policy. I'm going to mute myself now, and you can respond.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, Sue, and I'm really sorry to hear that, and thank you for sharing, because I'm very sorry to hear about what's happened to your husband, and particularly how long it's taking. I think Charlotte might have more to say, but we certainly, as we're looking at things like this free strikes and out policy, I'll definitely bring this up with the team developing it so they can consider it, because I think you make a really important point about, because ultimately all of this we're doing to help victims and to make sure that those being affected by ASB are get the resolution they need. So I'll certainly bring that up. I don't know if Charlotte has more to say.
Yes, I can just come in again on the good practice guidance that we're putting together, just to provide a little bit more clarity on that. We're not bringing in requirements on local authorities or housing associations going forward on how they can address mental health issues or drug and alcohol issues with perpetrators. It's more going to be case studies of best practice that our advisory panel have provided us. So it's basically to provide some good practice that people can look back on and see how organisations in the past have gone about preventing ASB and helping people, perpetrators of ASB, in order to actually tackle this issue and prevent harm to victims going forward. So yes, we hope that will make really good progress in terms of helping local authorities and housing associations to understand ways to help vulnerable people in that sense.
Okay, thank you everybody for contributing and being so open and honest about your situations. I really want to thank Charlotte and Nick for their input today from the department. Just anecdotally, here in Liverpool, I know working at a grassroots level in the community, there's a real feeling that new tools are coming quite significantly through to local authorities and the police from the department. And I know it's tough if you're facing some of these issues, but I think part of what you have to do is make the most of what's coming through the system. And I know certainly here I'm hearing anecdotal evidence that things are starting to change. And just hats off again to Alicia about that sticking in there and getting involved and being part of the solution, because it has to be a collaborative process. So thank you all very much for that, to get this session started. We'd like to do a very quick snapshot poll on what types of antisocial behaviour you might have faced, just as a bit of a kind of snapshot of what's happening out there. So Jane's going to launch the poll, and please feel free, just very quickly, to tick as many of the options that you might have faced if you have indeed faced antisocial behaviour. So you should have that come up now. Number of options there around noisy or abusive behaviour, or vandalism, graffiti, intimidation, drunkenness, littering, fly tipping, illegal drug use, excessively barking dogs. So it'll just give us a bit of a snapshot around what the kind of key issues emerging are. Great, thank you for that. So kind of what's emerging really is that intimidation is kind of the most prevalent form of antisocial behaviour people are facing for this small poll, followed by noisy and abusive behaviour, followed then by both vandalism and public drunkenness. Oh, and littering was in there as well, just before those, as being quite an issue. And then lower down the scale, we had graffiti. Okay, so thank you for that. Much appreciated. So now, can we move on to our next speaker? I'd like to bring in Nick Reynolds, who is the chair of the National Federation of Tenant Management Organisations and a Birmingham City Council tenant, who will be looking at issues around the reporting of antisocial behaviour, what a good response looks like, and what agencies can bring to the table.
Cheers, Paul. Sorry, I was just checking I wasn't on the mute thing. Welcome. Thanks, everybody, for inviting me along. It's great to see so many people here. I hope I can give you a bit of perspective from my view. I'm not a specialist in antisocial behaviour or anything like that. But just to give you a bit of background to me, I'm chair of the National Federation of Tenant Management Organisations. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Birmingham, and I'm from a local tenant management organisation in Birmingham. I also, I'm always say this when I do my talks, I'm a very proud tenant of Birmingham City Council, because as a TMO, we're not a landlord, we manage the properties on behalf of the local authority. I think that's sometimes forgotten. And for my sins, probably setting myself up here, my background is actually in policing and criminology. So I also act as an independent advisor to West Midlands Police on various matters in relation to use of force, stop and search, and community engagement. And we do sometimes obviously cover antisocial behaviour. So I'll try and help as much as I can in relation to any questions that you might have once I finish speaking. So what I've been asked to talk about is how should residents report problems and to who. Obviously, we need to report it to the landlord, and we need to recognise is this criminal antisocial behaviour, or is it something that the landlord should do? As we've already talked about, it should be a multi-agency approach to tackle antisocial behaviour, and hopefully with the new guidance that's coming through, that will be really emphasised, because you know, criminal damage is a criminal offence, but sort of like, you know, it also impacts on the local authority, on the housing. So all of these things need to be taken into consideration, and all agencies need to work together in order to tackle antisocial behaviour and address antisocial behaviour. We as tenants also need to remain pragmatic, as has been spoken about. You know, people have got mental health issues and drug issues and alcohol issues. We need to be supporting them but letting them know about the impact on their what their actions are doing to us. So I know from personal experience how much of a pain it really is when you report antisocial behaviour and you get asked to fill in an incident diary. Those incident diaries are really useful because it will time and date every incident that you reported, but also a good incident diary should ask you how you feel. So that helps to strengthen the case for the landlord or for the police, because if it meant, you know, the law's very explicit. If it caused you distress, alarm or intimidation, that is action that they can take on it. You need to emphasise on those reporting mechanisms how this is making you feel. You know, the terrible case that was spoken about a short time ago, where the chap's, what, 2-3 years on, still won't go into his back garden. That's completely unacceptable. You know, it needs to be looked into, not least to lead to a better standard of living, you know, for the tenant concerned, because it's not about saying, you know, that Joe Smith down the road is causing us a problem. It's also about what is going on with Joe Smith down the road that's causing him to cause the problems. That is up to the local authority, the housing department and the police to sort out, because at a basic level, if we don't feel comfortable in our homes, we need to feel safe and secure. It's a basic human right, you know, for us to feel safe and secure in our homes, but recognising that some actions of other community members can cause us a few problems. One of the things that has been spoken about is the, it's not called an antisocial behaviour review. I would always encourage a community to come together, not least because the strength in numbers. That doesn't mean to, you know, say set up a vigilante group or anything like that. It means that, I mean, in my block, there's 4 of us in my block. So if it's affecting me, the chances are it's affecting 2 other tenants in the block as well. To find out what their views are, and if they're willing to report it to the local authority or the police as well. And away from that, it also helps with a support network. So it's sort of all, you know, we'll help you, you know, we'll support you, and we'll go to court, we'll give evidence. But hopefully people will do that. My experience, personal experience, didn't work like that. But it's all about communication. Communication, not just between the agencies, you know, the police and the council and the landlord, but also amongst us as tenants. As I say, we can only go strengthen our case by supporting each other and making sure that the relevant authority is aware. This isn't just having an impact on me, it's having an impact on the community where I live. And as I mentioned, you know, I've got background in criminology, and I'm sure you've all heard of the broken window syndrome. It's basically, that syndrome is, if there's a broken window, if you fix it, sorry, if you leave it, it will lead to 2 more broken windows, which will lead to 3 more, and it brings down the standard of an estate. However, if you start repairing that window or removing the graffiti and showing people, okay, you're doing it, but we're going to keep on moving it forward, it tends to disrupt their behaviour. It's the politest way I can say this, because it's, oh, you know, we'll move on. And again, personal experience from that. As I say, we manage homes on behalf of the local authority, and we was targeted with graffiti. So what we deliberately did was we cleaned it off, and then we thought, well, okay, we'll put you a little notice up, and it's sort of like, thank you very much for your tagging. This has been noted. It's also been photographed and passed to the relevant authority. We really enjoy you keep doing this, but we find it rather disruptive to our community. Please continue to do so if you would like to, because we are capturing the images of you doing this work, and we would like to share this with the relevant authorities. And all of a sudden it stopped, and it's, oh, right, great, that works. You know, so it's just about putting it back onto sometimes a person who's actually causing this disruptive behaviour. And again, it's all about community, about getting the community together to support you and to support the police or to support the local authority in trying to address the antisocial behaviour, because it brings down a community, and it causes so many problems for communities. It is unbelievable. Well, it's not unbelievable because, you know, you probably already know about it. So one of the questions that I was asked is, what does a good response look like? And just quickly looking on the screen, I can't answer that question, because what a good response to me would be might not be the same to Jane or to Paul or to Jennifer or to Charlotte. Everybody's got their own individual, what they want to see from their complaint. And you need to, again, on those forms, on those logs, let people know what you would like to see. We're not asking as tenants for the person to be evicted. We're not asking for the person to be imprisoned. We're asking them to address their behaviour and or support them in overcoming that behaviour, in order that we can all live as nice as we possibly can. One of the other things that, and I'll put it in from the notes, I've been asked to talk about who can you report it to. Now, it is incredibly frustrating, because you can get passed from pillar to post, we all know that. But there's a couple of organisations that I've found online, and one's called ASB Help. I'm just about to put it into the details into the chat, actually. Yeah, there you go. So if you contact them, asbhelp.co.uk, they've got a section on there where it will take you through a tick the box exercise, and it will direct you either to the local authority or to the police, or it might be that they will pick it up on your behalf as well. And also with Police UK, they can pick it up as well and direct you to the relevant person to look at and to contact. If you're using Police UK, and you have a nose around that website, I'll just a bit of a caution, because you can narrow down into your neighbourhood what crime and various things are going on in your area, and it can be alarming because you can see, there's been 18 cases of criminal damage and 5 antisocial behaviours, and then robberies and things like that. It is how the police record things, and how that particular website actually records the crimes. It can actually send you into a bit of a panic. It might make you feel a little bit unsafe in the community. So the information's there, but just use it cautiously is what I'd say. And as mentioned, another question I've been asked to deal with is, how should residents and landlords work together with other agencies in the community? It's not just about the statutory agencies, in relation to the landlords, the police, anybody like that. It's also about liaising with us as tenants. As was mentioned earlier, I think Charlotte mentioned, a fairly good example is communication. We report antisocial behaviour, and then we don't hear nothing about it. So then that inadvertently means that we feel that nothing's being taken serious about it. All we'll hear is, data protection, this, and and confidentiality, that. Great, but just let us know that you've had a chat with the relevant people, and that we're being taken seriously, as opposed to just ignoring us. Somebody mentioned earlier that they contacted the landlord and they haven't received anything back. Keep on contacting the landlord, keep on sending those emails, and above all, keep recording the times and dates of those emails. If you report antisocial behaviour to the police, ask them for a log number, and that will be, I don't know how it works across the country, but certainly in West Midlands Police, it'll be log 1081 of the 7th of the 6th, which is a log number. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a crime number. Sometimes people mistakenly ask for a crime number. A crime number can't be generated until the log number has been investigated. So if you've got 10 examples of log numbers, that shows that you've been reporting it. And as I say, the key thing that I want to get over is about communication, and also about ensuring that we get that message over to the landlord and to the police, and to encourage them to work together, not just with them, the statutory bodies, but also with us as tenants groups or whatever. We know and recognise that there's some things that they can't tell us, but at least tell us that something's being done about it. That then leads us to feel that we're being listened to. I think I've hopefully covered a few things there. I'm more than happy to try and answer some questions. It's great to see. I can just see quickly in the chat. the police have been brilliant with some people. Unfortunately, it's not a consistent service. It's not a consistent service in the landlord agencies as well. It's not a consistent service across everywhere. So, as I said, a good example for one person might not be the same as for another person. So just bear that in mind. And as I say, I hope you found that useful. I'm more than happy. I'm sorry I didn't use presentations. Don't really do presentations. I prefer to just have a chat. So anybody's got any questions, by all means, fire them at me.
Thanks very much, Nick. Really appreciate that. Brian Barnsley.
I can understand what Nick has been saying, and I think probably one of the issues is that when a tenant has an issue, one, they're a little bit scared of a reprisal where if something happens or if somebody goes to them. But the other aspect of it is that you get a lot of tenants who will report things, but they get little or no support, or they get told, if it's antisocial behaviour, you need to report it to the police, or you need to report it to community safety, or you need to report it, to anybody walking down the road, but we don't want to know about it. Particularly where you've got, and in a lot of cases, you've got a lot of estates which were originally council estates, which are now mixed tenure. And they don't identify it as being an issue which affects their tenants. They look at it as, well, that's a private property, that's a private residence within an estate area now. And they try and fob it off onto, oh, you need to speak to somebody in the council, or you need to speak to somebody somewhere else. But where you've got, and probably most areas now, they've got that mixed tenure. And the issue may well be from houses and properties that are now privately owned, or private and being rented out privately. And it leads to, there's a lot of inconsistency across the board. And I'm looking forward, in the next few weeks when they do publish the guidance, that in some ways or in some form they will address that particular issue, so the tenants can actually have a way forward on it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brian, for that. I think one of the things I wanted to just add on the back of what Nick was saying was also that notion of, working collectively with your community. And one of the first training sessions that this program did was look at things like setting up residents associations or community voices or things like that, as well as kind of what Alicia and Nick are doing about being heavily involved in your organisation. Actually work with your neighbours to try and to get support from each other. I think that's also really important in this whole agenda as well. So thank you very much, Nick. We're going to move on now. Unbelievably, we're just 1 minute over time. So fantastic, Nick. Thank you very much. And we're going to now do another quick short poll. This is just to give us a bit of a snapshot of how people are dealing with this issue. So when you've reported your antisocial behaviour problems to your landlord, what has been the response you have had, maybe? If you could just answer that quickly, just tick one box if you can. So Jane has started the poll. So we're asking whether you've had any response or a poor response, or they've asked you to fill in log sheets, or that it's actually been better than that. You've had a good response that's tackled the problem, and actually have you had an excellent response that's prevented further problems occurring? Okay, so if we end the poll, but looking at the results there that we've had, it's poor response has been the strongest, 47%, followed by they asked me to keep filling in an incident log sheet. Certainly my experience in the housing association when I worked there was people get frustrated that filling in the log sheets, you want to see that move on somewhere, that action is coming from it. So obviously people are feeling that. We've had 2 people say that they had a good response that tackled the problem, so that's good to hear. It would be nice to think that in a year's time, if we came back, that would be higher, because that's what everybody's working to. And 1 person said nothing, no response at all. So hopefully today it's given you some tips about how the regulation is being strengthened to make landlords actually have to do something around this. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. So now I'm going to move on and introduce you to our final speakers today, who will outline what tools landlords have to deal with antisocial behaviour and some of the innovative approaches that have been taken. So firstly, we're going to have a short video from Terry Fredericks-Greenslade, who is the Antisocial Behaviour Officer from Colchester Borough Homes. And he'll be followed by Suzanne Page, who's here from Active Essex. So over to you, Jane, to show the film from Terry.
Good afternoon. My name's Terry Fredericks-Greenslade and I'm an Antisocial Behaviour Officer for Colchester Borough Homes. I'd like to introduce Project Morpheus to you as a project that we set up during the increased community tensions on one of our estates in Colchester. During the increased community tensions, Colchester Borough Homes initiated a residents' meeting. It was well attended and included over 30 tenants, not all Colchester Borough Homes tenants, and other housing providers, Essex Police and family support agencies. The residents in attendance were both victims and witnesses and extremely anxious about the issues they had been experiencing, which included hate crimes, vandalisms, and the estate was being overrun by youths who were causing mayhem. They wanted the reassurance that action would be taken. A great amount of time was taken to explain and manage the expectations. But the common theme the residents concluded was that the children were bored, and that's why they resorted to the behaviour. This is where Project Morpheus was born, and from it, using some of the ideas voiced at the meeting, the project is where it is today. Colchester Borough Homes officers saw the opportunity to prevent and deter young people from engaging in ASB activities. Having seen an increase in the ASB in particular estate and being made aware of increased community tensions, we took the opportunity to design a diversionary project targeted those that were at the centre of the issues. CBH enrolled the Essex Police officers to refer into the project, using community resolutions, community protection warnings, along with acceptable behaviour contracts. These were issued to the parents and would form part of a file that would be used to go to court if necessary. Youth offending team referred into the project, as did Family Solutions and other housing providers. It was open to all who would benefit from the project and was made accessible to all appropriate professionals. The project was funded by Colchester Borough Homes and Colchester Borough Council and worked with key stakeholders, including Essex County Fire, Rescue Service, the British Army, local councillors, youth offending, Colchester United Football Club, Youth Offending Service and Essex Police. The project was designed and aimed towards young people aged 10 to 18 who had been engaging or identified as being likely to engage in low-level crime and antisocial behaviour. Most projects involve the one-off event with repeat of the same type, but this project has several intervention types providing longevity and sustainable outcomes. The planning and commitment orchestrating the multi-agency approach and determination to get the buy-in from several agencies is the reason why the project deserved an award at the Resolve Awards last year. Besides giving a taste of potential career opportunity, it teaches some essential life skills and encourages community cohesion. It empowers youth to recognise and harness skills they already have and use them in a positive and constructive way, to care for the environment, learn about team working and football skills, and have a sense of pride in the community. The project included in July a Make a Difference Day. Colchester Borough Homes holds these quite often, and it brings the community together to work on certain parts of estates where areas are cleaned of rubbish, fences are painted, and it's to bring about community cohesion. Some of our youths would have attended that to put back into the community where they may have been causing issues and where they may have damaged property in the course of their actions. In the same July, there was a weekend with the British Army. This was designed to instill discipline, teach basic skills around emotional control, teamwork, basic cooking, basic first aid skills, and this was hosted by the 3rd Parachute Regiment. This would have been a weekend away where the youths would have gone camping. They would have been given certain skills, such as command tasks, so they'd learn to work as a team. In August, we open a garden project at the Cannons, which is one of our older persons sheltered schemes. And we have a company that comes in that works with people with learning disability and autism, and they maintain the gardens at that project. So we've got some of the youths to come along that had committed hate crimes towards racial and elderly people. And they worked with people with learning disabilities and autism and older people to learn about diversity, equality, and working in a community where they may find people that are different to themselves. In September, we worked with Premier League Kicks at the Colchester football ground. And this was teaching football skills and teamwork and provided opportunities for better health and well-being. We also gave talks there with regard to antisocial behaviour, what it is and where it can lead. And a lot of the youths weren't aware that they were actually engaging in antisocial behaviour with some of the actions they were taking. In September, we held a paintball course, which again brought about teamwork and also helped with people cohesively working together. It was also used as a kind of prize for those that had engaged with the project and had worked closely with us. We then moved on to October, and Essex County Fire Brigade, they run something called Fire Break. I'm sure many of you are aware of what that is. It's where our youths would have gone along. They would have learnt skills, what the fire services do. They would have been taught on a week-long course about health and also fighting fires. They would have been given drills to take place in. And again, it's about building teamwork and people feeling part of the community. In November, we had a community tree planting, which was run by Colchester Borough Council. Every year they plant trees ready for the spring. And some of our youths that had actually damaged some of the trees on the estate went along to plant extra trees to make up for what they'd done. And also just to give them the opportunity to see that the trees were there for a reason and not just there to be vandalised. In December, we worked with Essex Police. They run a thing every year where presents are collected from different organisations. They're wrapped up and given to people and children that are not as well off as other people are. Again, this gave the youths the opportunity to look at themselves, look at their background, and actually see that life isn't so bad for them. This goes on a yearly basis, and we will be rolling on the project for 2023, following the success from 2022. Thank you for listening.
Really enjoyed that, really inspired to see those different partnerships that's been created there. Could I now also bring in Suzanne Page from Active Essex, who's going to talk about a project she's involved with, and then we'll have some questions and discussion. Hello, Suzanne.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. So I hope I can be as inspirational as just that presentation that you've just seen. I too work within the Colchester area, but first of all, I'll explain what the Active Essex Foundation does and what it covers. Active Essex Foundation is part of the Active Essex programme, which is run obviously by the government department, Sport England. That money comes out to local councils and other authorities to ring fence that money to look at getting more of its community involved and actively moving to increase not only their physical health, but their mental health as well. And that includes people from sort of birth right up to sort of 99 and beyond. However, the Active Essex, where I work for, drilled even deeper down and formed its own charity foundation, which enabled us to work more closely on specific projects and target audiences which we weren't able to always help within the active ethics programme because that's a government directive and it's ring fenced with its money and its projects. The foundation has a number of key outcomes, including working with young people and organisations to reduce and deter young people with antisocial behaviour and at risk of offending behaviours. We have formed what's called the Sports and Youth Crime Prevention Project, which is funded by the Lottery and other key partner agencies, which covers not just Colchester, but the whole of Essex, Southend and Thurrock, Southend and Thurrock being unitary bodies as well. This is a 3-year-long project, but already it's been agreed that it will be extended because of the success of year 1. The project has 3 main outcomes, and the whole of these outcomes are in case with working with young people who are at risk of offending behaviours, at risk of child exploitation, criminal exploitation, right through to those who have unfortunately tipped the scales, who are now on that criminal offending path and or placed with the youth offending services, within police custodial units or within prison. Our first part is to work with community sports providers because we're a sports-based intervention programme. Community sports providers, which we call local trusted organisations, LTOs, to work with them and bring them together as a network to try and prevent lots of small community and large community organisations working in silo, competing for funding, short-term projects, and not really getting those measures of outcomes seen, and also always in competition to one another. So sometimes you can have a saturation of projects in one location, where actually you need it in other locations where it's going to be more use. So we bring all the networks together across the whole of Southend and Essex and Thurrock to share best practice, to look at project sharing, resources and staff delivery, and this is working really well. We're also delivering lots of training for them as well. And as a network, they've been held as a success right across with the Ministry of Justice recently within the Birmingham conference, who said he hadn't seen something like this working so effectively across the country as yet. Second part of what we do is we bring together the criminal justice teams, those specifically working with the youth justice sector. And those teams, we're looking at a system change. We're trying to engage them in conversations about how, whilst they've been doing things for a number of years now, how sometimes just changing that direction and listening to the communities in an asset-based community development model, which means listening to communities and delivering within the communities rather than always outsourcing, can work more effectively. So we're looking at a top-down and a bottom-up approach. The top-down approach is that I work very closely with the youth offending service, the youth service, the police teams, the courts, etc., all those working to support young people to turn them away from their criminal or risk of criminal exploitation. And with that, we're looking at how sports, and any type of sports, we're not talking your hardcore, your boxing, your rugbies, the footballs, all the ones you recognise. We're talking right through to gardening, fishing, yoga, dance, even graffiti, where they're moving and they're taking some sort of activity-based intervention project and using that as an intervention tool within its own right, and then also blending it with mentoring, life skills, coaching, mental health support as well. So it's a whole sports and life skills package. And the final part of what we're doing is a monitoring and evaluation toolkit. Now, you might be familiar when working with intervention projects that every time you get funding from somewhere, you're expected to complete the monitoring and evaluation for outcomes. It's always different every time you get it. So therefore, you can't compare like for like across your communities, across your locations, because each funder will ask a different set of questions. What's been introduced, working with our key partners, who are Street Games and Loughborough University, and we're all very closely linked with the Ministry of Justice, is bringing in line one data set collection toolkit. Therefore, we can compare how one project is doing in one location against another, where the individualities are and where the comparisons are. What's working well for one may not work well for another, but at least we can compare like for like on some of the key questions, particularly around the Office of National Statistics Youth Data Collection Toolkit. So we're within our first year now, and we've just completed, and the evaluation from that project that we deliver has already had quite a big impact, and it's already gone up for the lottery to review its outcome. So where does this bring us down now to what's happening in Colchester and my colleague who's just done his presentation? Within Colchester, we have one specific project that we started quite small, and to be honest, it's on the back of Colchester Borough Homes, who successfully run this project pre-COVID. However, we took their previous project and turned it into something much longer and much more intervention, working with loads of key partner agencies. These key partner agencies being the police, social care, the turnaround project team, the youth offending service, schools, and community agencies as well, and voluntary groups who make referrals in for young people who meet that criteria of being at risk of continuing into receiving a criminal order, those at risk of offending behaviours, those with identified behaviours at school who are leading on to disruptive behaviour in the community. It's a box smart program, quite simple to implement. It's at the moment, it was a 9-week program using boxing with qualified coaches, youth offending service teams and youth service teams supporting young people who attended, not just with boxing and learning the skills of boxing, but also about, obviously, you know about boxing, so obviously it releases anger, it supports anger management, it supports team working, it supports negotiation skills, it supports coordination and hand and eye coordination. And quite a lot of young people involved in antisocial behaviour seem to enjoy this type of activity as a way to release their pent-up frustrations. However, we use mentoring and life skills as part of that project. Within its first year, which I'm just going to show you its outcomes, it was very successful. And on the back of that, we've been able to secure a year-long project, because I saw some of the comments in the chat about how often we see the government releasing short-term funding, which is for 6 or 12 weeks, and it doesn't give any organisation enough time to embed a project, let alone see the outcomes, let alone record any long-term outcomes as well. So the new project, after the presentation I'm going to show you, is now a full year's funding. It enables young people to go through the basics of 12 weeks of boxing, through to then receiving martial arts and other types of sport. But whilst they gain qualifications and opportunities to take part in volunteering in their local community as well, and obviously become peer mentors to other young people. So at the end of the year-long project, they will receive an abundance of qualifications, from sports qualifications to first aid, to basic food hygiene, to working and supporting young people in the community, to volunteering qualifications as well. So we're hoping that young people will engage more than 9 weeks, but right through for a whole year. And by then, they will want to continue engaging post-course support. We're also providing them with memberships and resources. So we're taking away some of those barriers that some families say prevent them sending their young people to these types of provisions. So we're trying to cross off things that young parents will say, well, I can't send my child there because of this reason. So we're looking at that as well, and we're working very closely with all the partner organisations. So I'm just going to hopefully, fingers crossed, share my screen and just run you through the first time we ever did it, the 9-week box smart provision. Right, here we go. Right. I hope everybody can see that. We'll start from the beginning if you can. Okay. So as part of the foundation, we worked closely and we received funding from Colchester Borough Homes and Colchester Council. I seem to be in the sunshine here. Colchester Borough Home and Colchester Borough Council, and along with Active Essex Foundation funding to start 2 box smart provisions for Colchester. A report was produced to demonstrate to other partner agencies how you can use sports as an engagement and effective engagement tool when looking at secondary intervention and prevention work. As it says, we work with the Youth Offending Service and other agencies, and we brought together 19 young people on referral, with 16 young people attending the full provision. These referrals came from a multitude of agencies, including schools, through to youth offending service, youth service, people within the community, and self-referrals as well. On my next slide that I'm showing now, you can see the average age is between 12 and 16, with a split between 68 males and 28 females, and 5 who didn't identify themselves as one particular gender. These are only snapshots of the data. A full report shows it more. Most young people, out of the 16 young people that attended, 12 of those young people attended more than one session. We count that as unique attendance, with 80 attendances in total. The most popular reason for attending the cited by the young people was to become healthy, have fun, and learn new things. But actually, whilst they were there, we saw a huge change in their behaviours and attitudes, which young people don't tend to self-evaluate. At the beginning of this course, all young people will asked to self-evaluate on a number of key questions, and they are the Office of National Statistics questions, but also along with their involvement in community disruptive behaviours, their behaviour at home, their behaviour at school. So as you can imagine, young people don't always want to be as honest as we'd like them to be, so we can only go by what they say. But what we do also within our data collection is we do an engagement ladder, which is our engagement and participation ladder. Within our engagement and participation ladder, it goes on a scale, and the coaches and the mentors and the other organisations that were there to co-support were able to do a self-reflection themselves on how they saw the young person's behaviour. So for instance, level 1 being disengaged. So that's those young people who are referred because of their very poor behaviours and attitudes within the community, home, or within education. So some young people were marked at a level 1, and obviously some young people may be marked at a level 2, 3, etc. But what we were trying to achieve is move them from level 1 or 2, wherever their starting point was, to being more involved, more active, more taking part, more learning new negotiation skills, team cohesion, and just working together and learning from one another, I suppose, or positive role models from one another, and looking towards achievement and ideally autonomy, where they're volunteering, they're making good choices. And this engagement scale is used right across the Active Essex Foundation to compare projects and young people to young people. And as it says there, you can see the engagement scores and the changes within those engagement scores as well. First week was recorded majority at number 2, with an increase at 4.2 within the last 1 week, and one young person moving from disengaged level 1 to week 5. That particular young person had some very complex issues and had many ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, within their background. And we were so pleased to see them from their first day of where they literally either wanted to pick up some of the equipment and hit or throw it at people, right through to the final week being so engaged that they were wanting to volunteer, and they were actually helping the coach and other young people with their tasks. And that particular young person has continued to be engaged within the membership that we're offered afterwards, because each young person that participated was not only awarded with medals and certificates and T-shirts, but they were also given membership to continue their attendance at the boxing club with the trained coaches. And this young person still continues to today. The positive changes within the young people they saw was how these were the type of questions that we asked. They may not seem a large movement, but if you understand the type of questions and the way young people value themselves, we would never expecting a vast movement in their scores. These are OSN, Office of National Statistics questions. So for instance, down the bottom left-hand corner on my screen, I can achieve most of the goals myself, 3.7%. Now those young people were self-evaluated again at 4.2. How strongly do you feel about your immediate neighbourhood on the right-hand side? 2.2 to 2.7. That was recorded when young people started to talk more positively about being involved in their neighbourhood and realising the effect of their antisocial behaviour and the disruptive behaviours in the community and what it was having on their families, but also their neighbours. And I just wanted to bring you onto this with Leo's story so we can finish up for today. Leo is a 12-year-old boy who attended Boxmart in Colchester. He was referred by a social worker. And as it says here, because his aggressive behaviour towards his mum and at school. And they hoped by making this referral that he would learn self-control. He joined the group, and as one of the coaches said, within a few sessions, faced some immediate challenges because of other young people who knew him and disliked him. Young people quite often find it difficult to come together to groups, and we don't quite understand that sometimes. We expect them to turn up to youth provisions and make friends, but actually, working in some of the areas I do across Essex, there's almost a postcode no-go area, and young people can't move around as freely as we think they can. And quite often they have to be very careful where they're going. And this young person faced this within his own local community. But with some persuasion and the boxing coach and others working with him, we were able to build some trusting relationship where we talked about some of the things that were going on in his life to the youth worker. And we were able to support him and his family through other provisions and also to youth worker sessions that we're holding within their own centre. As it said here, his attendance was sporadic. We have to remember that lots of these young people that do attend have ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. It's not easy for them to attend. There's other things going on at home. There's other things going on in their life as well. So therefore, it's difficult sometimes to get a full attendance, but one attendance is making a difference. Two attendance is building on that difference, and that's what we have to remember. And as it said here, he struggled to focus more than a few minutes at a time, and he was getting frustrated and was walking off. In fact, I must say there was one incident where we had the mayor come down to view the session, and he tried to take his medals and run off. It certainly caused a bit of an alarm when he was running out the building. As it says here, though, despite this, with some big changes in Leo, after a time he was able to focus more as the project went on. He made some new friends. He told staff he'd been avoiding the friends where he was smoking weed and shoplifting because he was tired of being in trouble. He is now engaging with the new support service. He's increased his attendance with other projects and that he's already involved in. And this particular young lad is also now volunteering as well. And again, just quickly, this last one, Sammy's a 15-year-old who attended the Box Smart provision. He heard about it from his youth worker, decided that it would help his confidence and self-esteem and make new friends. He struggled to integrate in the group and faced some hostility from other people, but he was encouraged and supported to get fully involved. And he was also encouraged to be open up in group discussions so people could understand him better. He absolutely loved boxing and attended every session, and he was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. There was times when we had to keep him focused. He also struggled with other young people and the way he spoke to young people and the way they spoke to him. And he also struggled with not wearing the right equipment. So again, we were able to purchase the right equipment for him as well. As it says here, Sammy grew in confidence and began to feel more comfortable in the group. He's made more friends. And Sammy's parents have even said they've also seen a huge improvement to his attitude at home. By coming to the Box Smart, he is happier, more focused, and there's been less family disagreement. Sammy is planning to continue at the time of writing this with his boxing. And in fact, when this was recorded at Christmas time, he's even asked for a punch bag. And I know that Sammy is still now continuing with his 6-month membership to the gym with support of his parents. So let me just bring you off that presentation, and then I'll open the floor to any questions, because I've sort of tried to keep it brief because I know you've been online for quite some time, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. Very inspiring stuff. And I know there's been a lot of conversation with people in the chat about sometimes these, funding has been reduced for statutory services. So, things are hard to get going. But one of the things I would certainly say is that there's a lot of funding out there for community groups to apply to do sort of these sort of activities. So I know it can take a while, but it's really exciting to hear some of these initiatives that are going on. There's almost new approaches being taken to provide some of these solutions moving forward. I'm very conscious of the time, but has anybody got a quick question or anything they want to raise? So Sue, you've raised a question, you haven't.
I'm just going to say, I actually started a youth club in my own area because there was no provision and funding was an issue. So we decided to go to the local carver, and set up an organisation so we could apply for funding. And the only people that came forward were the parents. Unfortunately, every parent that actually came forward had got a criminal record. So we couldn't do the DBA checks and that excluded us from funding. And then once they were actually told they couldn't get funding for their own children because of their criminal records, all that goodwill that those parents I'd actually coached and brought them along, because they weren't interacting at the beginning, went, and the community cohesion just fell apart. And so I struggle in my area to get help, because we've been there once and they had their faces slapped, and I can't do it a second time. It took a lot to actually get some parents who I knew were not the best of parents to actually say, yes, we'll help. I was shocked when every one of them had got a criminal record, because I'd work with anybody, but unfortunately the funders and the local authority wouldn't. So this is why I struggle in my area, and in fact the local authority, who did not provide any sort of activities for the young children, actually I had a knock at my door because I was then told I could not start a youth club. And I told them, when they start one, I will stop mine. And this is the problem, you know, people don't want to do something in the area, but want to stop those who are we're actually trying to make a difference. So that's all I'm saying about it.
No, I feel you there. So I've had those issues before. I've worked 25 years in the criminal justice sector and come across that's a barrier. And I'd be really interested to hear which local authority, don't say out loud, but was turning down the engagement of ex-offenders, because there is a policy going forward, depending on the nature of the offence, to positively look to recruit ex-offenders, because it's about their rehabilitation into the community. So I'd be really interested to see that one, because Essex does have a positive recruitment for ex-offenders, depending though, obviously, on the type of offence and the provision. But also, please do check out Active. I'm not sure which location you're on, but for us, it's Active Essex. There's an Active Suffolk. There's an Active London, because they do a lot of holiday provisions and a lot of holiday funding for primary and secondary age young people who fall into the free school meal category and the vulnerable category, and that includes those within the categories that we've been talking to. So it's well worth checking that out as well. But I do know how difficult it is to start up any type of youth provision, detached work, and how often housing authorities and police teams always want to move that problem on rather than trying to tackle the problem where it is, because young people just sometimes want something to do. They'll blame it on the fact they have nothing to do in the community, and often even when provided it, they may not attend. But if we can take away some of those barriers by offering things where the disruptive behaviour is happening, whether that's detached work, we often go out with our providers and do parkour. We take boxing into the local park. We do skating in the local park. But then I suppose we're fortunate in Essex that we've got a council that's really bought into physical activity alongside mental activities. So it's doing that dual role to reach out to sort of children, primary age and young people, to ensure that they're trying to engage them in the right type of provision.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Suzanne. I think that's a thought-provoking end to this day. And interestingly, a couple of weeks ago, I went up to see a library in Blackburn, and it was run by the community because the library was going to close, and they turned half of it into a gym to attract the young people in who loved the gym and then have started to engage with the library. So it's kind of an interesting kind of community-led approach there. So that ends today's session. So I just wanted to thank you all for attending. We've gone over slightly, but I think that was very useful to hear that last conversation. And I want to give special thanks to our insightful speakers for their input into this session. I would also really encourage you to sign up, if you haven't already, for our newsletter and help to shape this programme. We're at the start of this 4 million homes movement, I think, that's really building. And, you know, we really want to kind of engage as many people as possible in this whole journey. And we're also looking for people to join our resident sounding board. So you can contact us at info@4millionhomes.org if you're interested in that, and it would be great to have you involved. Also, do check our social media platforms and website and tell your friends and neighbours about 4 Million Homes. We want as many residents to get involved in the programme as those who want to be involved. And finally, if you are from a landlord, and I think there are one or two here, we would like you to sign up for our supporters kit at info@4millionhomes.org and tell your residents about the programme and the training that's available. So once again, thank you so much for attending today. I found it really useful and insightful and got kind of quite inspired by this. And I look forward to seeing you at future 4 Million Homes events. So thank you very much and enjoy the evening.